Building 1 crore in India is not just about being a crorepati. It's your ticket to true financial independence. Once you cross it, everything changes. But the sad reality is that less than 30 lakh people in India are actually crorepatis out of a population of 140 crore Indians. That's just 0.2% of the population. But the good news is that by 2030, at least 1 crore crorepatis will be made in India. But the question is, will you be one of them? Let's start with why 1 crore. Because after 1 crore, your investment starts generating more money than most people's salaries. Think about it. Once you have 1 crore rupees invested, you have created another you who is passively generating 1 lakh rupees per month. What do most people do? Most people exchange their time for money to pay for liabilities like home loans and car loans and get stuck in this never-ending loop. But once you have 1 crore of savings, the passive income that it generates can help you pay off at least 60 to 70% of your EMIs. And that is the beginning of your financial freedom journey. Now, before I actually teach you how to become a crorepati in less than 10 years, let me first bust the biggest myth of all that keeps millions of educated Indians poor. I hear this constantly. Sharan, if I just had a job shift from TCS to Google and start making 50 lakhs per annum, then I would be rich overnight. Completely wrong. The problem isn't your salary. The problem is the lifestyle inflation trap that millions of Indians get sucked into once they move into a bigger city. I've seen software engineers making upwards of 30 lakhs per annum but still have a savings rate much lesser than a government employee making 12 lakhs per annum. How is this possible? So when you start earning more in India, the society immediately upgrades you to a higher minimum expected lifestyle. We see this all the time. Moving from a 20k per month rent in Whitefield to 70k per month rent in Indiranagar. Upgrading from a Honda Activa to a 1 crore BMW. Moving from cooking at home to ordering constantly from Swiggy almost every single day. Now, before you know it, your increase in salary quickly vanishes into higher lifestyle expenses. Now, don't get me wrong. You definitely need a minimum salary to become a crorepati in the next 10 years. Our parents got half of the advice right. Study hard, get good marks, get into a top university, get a high CTC package, and then life will be set. But the reality is, life is not set even after you get a 50 lakh package. Because unfortunately, schools and colleges did not teach us what to do with that money once it hits your bank account. So let us find out what is that minimum salary that you need to become a crorepati in the next 10 years. We will first assume a 30% savings rate on your post-tax income. Now I know what you must be thinking. Most people are not able to do this because they take up too many loans very early on in their life and living a hand-to-mouth existence. Do not be that idiot, else you will always be financially poor. Second, let us also assume that you can increase your savings rate by at least 10% every year. Now I know what you must be thinking. Sharan, it's not possible to increase your salary by 10% every year. I get that. But I also know that if you work really hard and if you're in the top 20% of the employees, it is very easy to get promoted at least once every 3 years and get that 15 to 20% hike. And to also do a job shift once every 5 years and get a 30% hike. That way, on an average, you can definitely generate a 10% salary hike every year. Now, if you're a slacker who wants everything to be handed to you on a silver platter, then I'm sorry, you cannot be a crorepati in a competitive country like India. So if I assume a 30% savings rate and a 10% step up in savings every single year, you will need to earn at least 12 lakhs per annum after generating 12% post-tax returns. Now the best part is, you don't have to pay any income tax on that 12 lakhs per annum post-budget 2025. But what about the taxes on the 1 crore that you just made? You don't have to pay any taxes until and unless you sell that 1 crore. Remember, we did not just make that 1 crore to spend it. We generated that 1 crore to be financially free. So until and unless you sell it, you don't have to pay any taxes. What do rich people do? Billionaires like Elon Musk don't actually sell their shares when they have to buy a yacht or a mansion. They actually take a loan against those shares at a very low interest rate. And that way, they don't have to pay any taxes. You can do that too by taking a loan against your mutual funds at 10 to 11% interest rate. That way, whenever you have to make a big purchase, you don't have to sell your stocks or mutual funds to actually make that big purchase. But now comes the tough part. How do you actually generate those 12 to 15% post-tax returns to actually become a crorepati in the next 10 years? Now, if you look at the last 5 years, there have been dozens of mutual funds that have given upwards of 30% CAGR in the last 5 years. But assuming that for the future would be too optimistic because that happened because of the bull run that we just saw post-COVID. But assuming a 15% post-tax returns is reasonable according to me if you are a passive investor who doesn't want to do a lot of grunt work reading financial statements and annual reports every single day. So if you're a passive investor who wants to invest and forget, this is what I would recommend. 60% of your money in the Indian stock market, 10% of the money in the US market, 15% in gold, 10% in fixed deposits, and 5% in crypto. Which means, if you're investing 30k per month SIP, around 18,000 rupees would go into Indian stocks and Indian mutual funds, 3,000 rupees would go into US stocks and ETFs and some tech companies, 4,500 rupees would go into gold mutual funds or ETFs or sovereign gold bonds in the secondary market, 3,000 rupees would go into a fixed deposit or bonds, and 1,500 rupees would go into crypto. This is the ideal portfolio mix for someone who is not an active investor and just wants to invest and forget. So if you follow this blueprint religiously in a disciplined manner, you have a very high chance of becoming a crorepati in the next 10 years. But what are those traps that could absolutely derail your plans from reaching that 1 crore mark? Trap number 1, not having enough health insurance coverage. Most of you guys would only be dependent on your company's corporate health insurance policy, which is usually not more than a 5 to 10 lakh coverage. That is not even 50% of the minimum required amount, especially if you're living in a big city. Imagine getting a 20 lakh hospital bill forcing you to sell your mutual funds. Bye-bye crorepati. Not just that, if you ever lose your job to AI, that company health insurance policy becomes invalid, and most of these policies have very unfavorable clauses which forces you to pay an additional amount even if you have the coverage. If you need free advice on your existing policies and if you need to upgrade to a better policy, you can check out the link below where we provide free advice on all kinds of health insurance and life insurance requirements. We also help you get out of the bad policies for completely free of cost. Trap number 2, family pressure spending. This is probably one of the biggest wealth killer for Indians. Most Indians are very comfortable spending 20 lakh on a wedding, that too on a loan. And they're very comfortable taking a 1.5 crore home loan as soon as they get married. If you do this, your chances of becoming a crorepati before you turn 45 is almost next to impossible unless you start earning at least 40 to 50 lakhs per annum. Trap number 3, increasing your monthly expenses by more than 10% every year. Learning how to budget is an underrated skill among India's youth. The annual savings rate of Indians have been on a declining trend over the last decade. Not because we don't earn more money, but because the world has created more ways to spend that money. Always remember guys, if you're making 1 lakh per month or 10 lakh per month, the world will always convince you that you absolutely need that new iPhone 17 to be happy. So in conclusion, building 1 crore in the next 10 years isn't about luck or inheritance. You do not need to go to IIT or even have rich parents. You just need to have a proven system and follow it diligently with absolute discipline. Now, the ball is in your court. Do you want to be a dreamer or an achiever? Dreamers are people who just watch the video and brag about their knowledge increasing. Achievers are people who actually use that knowledge and put that into action immediately. In my next video, I will actually teach you my 5-step framework on how I pick the best performing mutual funds out of 4,000 plus options. So make sure to like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next one.